So in the chat says the Riot Squad was on Timcast and they are apolitical.
Really? See, that's what I was thinking. I was like,
it's funny because later in this video, he even talks about how they were showing footage of the Proud Boys doing bad stuff, and that they were showing people at the Capitol doing bad stuff. And I think, and one of the Riot Squad people said that they were targeted by the Proud Boys because of this.
Really?
And yeah, and so, I mean, I have not super looked into them, whether they're apolitical or not. But it's very clear that they're looking for, people rioting and being contentious.
Yeah, they're the Riot Squad.
Yeah, they're the Riot
Squad. They're not the Antifa Riot Squad. Yeah,
right, exactly. It's just that the Antifa people are the ones who are doing the majority of the rioting. So.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Why would you want to cut off half your market? You're like, we'll sell to NBC, ABC, CBS. We'll sell to any of them.
Exactly.
Well, stay apolitical, right? You guys work out the politics. Fill my bank account.
Of the most viral videos of Black Lives Matter protests over the past year. And those images have helped to create the false impression, relentlessly driven home by Fox News and Republican politicians, that the nationwide wave of protests that erupted after George Floyd was killed was nothing but an excuse for mindless rioting. That's not to say that rioting never happens. It clearly does. And even if you believe that a riot is the language of the unheard, it's undeniable that looting and arson have scarred some communities where anger over racist policing spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
I like that. Even
fuck him.
This is so crazy. Even his denouncement of rioting is so milquetoast. It's like, well, it's only because anger over racist policing. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Citation fucking needed, man.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be a journalist. Where's the racist policing?
Right. Well, but even the protest, first of all, you could say, yes, the protests are over perceived racist policing, right?
Yes, that would be good. That would be great. Yeah. Instead of coming out and making a declaration that it's racist policing.
But then a lot of people rioting, they're just taking advantage of the chaos. They're not like, oh, the police are racist, so I'm going to go loot a Target. Like, I don't know if that's the thought process there. I think people are like, oh, people are like busting shit up. I guess it's a free game to just steal shit. Like, I think that's the thought process for a lot of this.
All of these big cases, they don't even have a racial component in the convictions or any of that stuff.
Well, that's what's crazy too, is that, this all was started by George Floyd.
Yes. Yeah.
And there was zero racial component even talked about in the trial.
Yes.
Derek Chauvin wasn't charged with a hate crime. He wasn't charged with anything related to that. So the idea that like, oh, well, they only did that because he's black is totally ludicrous. Totally ludicrous.
Yeah. People believe it though. That's the problem.
But that's what's so despicable about it. That's why this guy and all the other people that are hyper-fixating on the police are so despicable, because they keep peddling this false. He's crying. They're peddling a false narrative that Black Lives Matter is just a bunch of people rioting. It's like, you're peddling a false narrative that the police are racist as an institution.
Yes. Yeah. That's what's causing them to riot. You knucklehead.
Exactly. Oh my God. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah. Your institution is the source of this, and you're calling out the people who are at the very tail end of it, who are actually documenting the outcome of what you began in the very beginning when you started calling the police racist as an institution. You've fanned the flames of this. You've inspired people to riot, and these people are out there shooting those riots. Like, you need to look in the mirror, dude.
You have the Intercept, which is a very large publication, which is helping create the narrative that we live in a racist society with racist police that are just going around murdering innocent black people.
Mm-hmm.
And that they have the gall to punch down at some private journalist who's just walking around on the streets filming, the reaction to the false narrative that the Intercept and all these other people are pushing. and say, look at them, look at what they're doing. It's like, fuck you. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Look how you're destroying the country.
Filming the
really
results
despicable.
of your bogus narrative. Yep. It's fucking bullshit.
Exactly. It's so despicable.
Yeah. Which you're propagating in the hit piece on them as well. Which you're just coming boldly coming out and declaring.
Yes. Yeah. Richard Blum for $20. Thank you very much. Richard says S-Class got that breast masked.
What? What?
I guess all the Sitch Chan art, it's really getting to Richard.
Nice.
And A-Team is the cream stream. There you go.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Streaming cream. I don't know what to think of that. Thank you.
But the broader picture is that the Black Lives Matter protests have been overwhelmingly peaceful. Conservatives like to mock anyone who says that, usually by pointing to isolated images of chaos like those recorded by the Riot Squad, or by cherry-picking misleading data. Republican Senator Ron Johnson recently cited...
Now watch as he's about to cherry-pick misleading data.
Oh my God, the irony.
The irony.
Data showing that more than 500 racial justice protests last year turned violent. But Johnson failed to mention that the same researchers counted nearly 10,000 more Black Lives Matter protests that were entirely peaceful. According to the researchers, there was no looting, arson, or violence of any kind at 94% of the protests against racist policing.
So I looked at this study, and this is talk about your cherry-picking data. First of all, the majority of the protests that they count all happen within 1 to 3 days of George Floyd.
Oh, really?
Dying. Yes. That's if you look at the line chart, it's 90% of the protests all took place within 1 to 3 days of George Floyd. And that completely saturates the rest of the data sample after that, because the majority of the protests, except for obviously the one that happened where George Floyd was, the majority of the protests that happened the day of and the days after didn't have riots and were peaceful. But then you see after George Floyd, the numbers totally shift, where it's there's about a 1 in 3 chance, a 1 in 4 chance of every protest afterwards leading to a riot. So it's if you were to remove that giant sample of 1 in 3 days after George Floyd, the numbers would be vastly different. It'd be 30% violence.
Oh my God.
And then even then,
my God.
Yeah, it's totally crazy.
They go back to the
the
1960s for the protest.
Right. And then, but even then, it's it's still misleading, because I'm trying to remember. I think what they counted as a protest was something anything more than 5 to 10 people standing around with signs.
Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay, if you lump in a bunch of if you lump in a bunch of 5 to 10 people, all across the country in some random neighborhood somewhere standing on a street corner, it's okay, that's going to really skew the data in one direction. That's not what anyone's conceptualizing or thinking of when they think of riots. They're thinking of when you have these really large, massive protests that happen in cities where there's hundreds, if not thousands of people out on the streets.
So he's making an argument here. He has up on the screen, the vast majority of these events, 94%, involve no violence or destructive activity. Tell me something, Sitch. What is the argument that police are racist? What's the argument that people make that police are racist?
I want to see. Where's the statistic that says the vast majority of these events,
the vast majority
of police interactions with Black people involve no violent or death or anything destructive? Or
racist?
Right.
How come he's not making that argument? See,
exactly.
Wait, this seems like the identical argument.
I know, but
how come the argument works for his side but not for the conservative side?
I know, because it's all bullshit. That's why. This is all lies and tribalism and pandering. It's
nonsense. It's probably closer to 99.9% of police interactions, though. I don't know if it's
right.
94. If it was 94% with police interactions, I'd say, fuck yeah, we have a problem here. Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
6% of police interactions end up in someone dying. Fuck that.
As freaking Art in the chat says, talk about how many billions of dollars of damage there was. That's a good point. It's like, okay, so if only 6% of the protests are violent, but that 6% causes billions and billions of dollars
exactly.
of
Yeah,
damage,
exactly.
it's like, well, I don't know. Like, it's pretty important to focus on, don't you think?
Oh God, it's so cherry picking. It is so cherry picking.
But this guy, it's what's so crazy. Like, as I said, there's a legitimate criticism that's nestled in here. We could say, okay, maybe they're hyper fixating on this, but this guy's so horribly biased in the other direction.
Yeah,
Horribly biased.
He's not the messenger for this message.
No.